Today we're installing Legmaker intake on 2016 Challenger Hellcat. So first step, I'm going to say disconnect this sensor, pull up on the clip, and then pull out. Put it somewhere you're not going to forget it. Just whatever, just let it hang. Once it's disconnected. And then we want to disconnect this tube here. So for this, you want to push in on either side and pull. So you'll feel it here. It's hard to do with one hand. Then you want to take a flathead screwdriver, loosen this clamp here right before the metal piece, which is going to be the throttle body. So you want to loosen this hose clamp. Then there's 1, 2, 3 screws. You can use, looks like either a flathead or a Phillips, but we already have our flathead out, so let's use that. Take those off, and that'll get the air box off, which is the procedure you use to clean the filter anyway, or replace the filter rather. Clean if you have a K&N or something. Okay, so you want to slide forward and pull up to get this piece off, and then you can easily squeeze the two sides of this and pull out, and it'll slide off of here. Now I'm actually going to flip it over like this because you want to pull this gray tab out, and then you can pull the sensor plug out. Maybe not with one hand though, because it's kind of snug. So essentially you want to pull this gray tab back until you hear a snap, and then the plug should come out easily. Alright, now grab your 8mm socket and ratchet. Take this bolt off that's holding the lower portion of the intake. Alright, next you want to take the cone and you want to stick the larger end of the carbon fiber tube into it. This step was a little tricky because it's a very snug fit, but I find that what worked for me is I placed my arm through it and I grabbed the bottom and I just kind of pushed it straight on, and I used the flathead to kind of pull the rubber outward to kind of finesse it in there. And it's tricky, but you gotta be patient with it, and eventually it'll go in. And you put the hose clamp on here, then you tighten it down. Make sure it's snug, but don't over tighten it, because you can crack carbon fiber by over tightening a hose clamp, so don't do that. Next, take the original intake, and we're gonna use a T20 Torx bit to remove it. With the MAF out, stick it in the new intake, and we're going to use a 2.5mm Allen wrench to screw these in. Alright, now slide this coupler over. I'll throw these two clamps on there. One's going to go here around the bigger side, and one's going to go here around the throttle body side. Alright, so this thing is going to be a pretty tight fit. So essentially it's going to be basically rubbing against this thing here. You could shave it off because it's metal. If you had a metal cutting blade, you could shave it off, but then you can't put your airbox back to stock if you want to sell the car or trade it in. So I don't recommend that. I don't think Legmaker would either. So essentially what I did was make sure the coupler goes over the throttle body here all the way. Make sure it's around the bottom, the top, all sides. And then I was holding it with my this with my right hand because I needed to tilt it upward to keep it straight onto the throttle body. And with my left hand, I was taking a 10mm wrench and tightening it. You can use a socket, but the stud will poke through, so you need a deep socket. And I didn't have a 10 deep socket, so I just used a 10mm wrench. And if you have a ratcheting wrench, it'll make the process a whole lot easier because it took me like 5 minutes worth of turning a wrench. But anyway, you could be a little more liberal with this one as far as tightening goes because the throttle body is made of metal, so you're not going to crack it like you would the carbon fiber. But as stated before with this clamp to tighten down, and this one too, the carbon fiber intake is underneath of these clamps. So you don't want to over tighten it because you can crack the intake and damage it. And we have our mass airflow in here that we tightened earlier, 2 Allen wrench bolts, and ready to be plugged in. So back to our stock intake. Pull this straight up and out. I find twisting and pulling at the same time to be more effective. Also, you hold this down and then pull up on the other part. Yeah. All right. So the install guide on LX forum says to use silicone lube and pop this in here, but I don't have silicone lube, so I'm just gonna pop it in there. And then getting the rain shield on is going to be this bolt here that was used for the stock airbox, and the intake itself has to be sitting low enough in the bay for the rain shield to go over it. Now the way I have it now, it's not going to work because the filter is sitting up too high. So what you have to do is loosen this bit and rotate the entire assembly around the throttle body until this is far enough down in the engine bay that the rain shield can fit. So it's going to take some finessing to get everything to fit. Or you could just not run the rain shield, but just keep in mind that on the Challengers, the heat extractor there is directly above the intake. So whatever you decide to do, plug everything back in. So is it stuck? No, it's not stuck. Hose thingy. It should probably click. Yep. This thing here. Mass airflow sensor. I think this is probably IAT sensor. Or maybe that's in the throttle body. I don't know. New cars have so many sensors. I don't know what's what. All right, so when you push that in, you didn't hear a click, but I felt it lock, and that's that gray tab on the back here that we had to pull up, and you can actually push that gray tab down. I think that locks it.